This is a video about all the books I read in 2025. Wanted to talk about what I read because I read a lot and I am part of a book club, but we don't discuss every book I read, just the books that are assigned to me. So I thought we'd just go through it. For my 10 subscribers who subscribe by accident and are probably bots and don't remember that they subscribed, I haven't posted in like 5 years. So I did take a little break, it's fine. But now I'm back and just posting things in a different way. So let's talk about the first book that I read. We're just going to go through my Goodreads and talk in order about every book I read. These are more like reactions. Maybe they'll turn in reviews. My view on books is that I think all stories have something to offer. Even when I'm bored, I don't really know what's going to happen. And, I don't want to edit a lot. So I hope I do a good job. But let me see here. So the first one here is Rejection. No, it's The Strange by Nathan Ballingrud. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Don't at me, Nathan. Or please do, so that I know that I'm saying this correctly. So The Strange by Nathan Ballingrud. Oh, sorry to say that this will be a reaction, kind of a review. So I'm not gonna give a bitchy little score at the end, unless I do. So The Strange was a book about, it was recommended to me by my partner's friend from work. And this is they were working on a A24 movie. So this is what someone who makes movies thinks is an interesting book. And it's kind of a Western about being on Mars. And it's about this girl. It sort of has that Ray Bradbury quality where, people are on Mars and it's a little bit of a fantasy. There's air on Mars in this and people are drinking. It's kind of just like a sort of magical sci-fi take on a Western. And it's about this girl who, by the way, I did no research. I did no refreshing of my memory. This is just whatever my take was. And it's a very plot-driven book, very kind of pulpy, but very novel. It was cute. And it really was a great way to kick off the year. It looks like I finished it January 4th, 2025. Was he our president yet? Well, so things were still happy a little bit. We knew bad things were coming, but I was still making it through. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad, But it is pretty bad. So that book was good. I would recommend, if you're into sci-fi, if you're into Westerns, read it. I don't know if I might read it once in my life, one more time. Kind of like the way I feel is that I have a star rating system on Goodreads. And yes, I still do Goodreads, even though everyone is saying that the other platforms are more fancy. It's look, back in my day, I'm too old to move over to a new platform. I tried once, because you can do quarter stars, and it's I don't care that much. I'll just round up or round down, or I won't leave a score at all. Really, I only use Goodreads to just track what I'm trying to do. But anyway, back to the review. No, not back to the review because I was explaining my system, but 3 stars means that I don't regret reading the book, but I don't think I'm going to read it again. But of course, we're all changing, we're all growing. Maybe future me or past me would love a certain 3-star book. So, I don't know, you always have to stay open-minded. So, and I'm looking at The Strange here, I gave it 4 stars. So maybe I will read it again. Maybe in the nursing home I'll read it. The next book I read was Rejection. And this book by Tony, again, don't at me, Tony Themute. But this is a collection of short stories, kind of internet-inspired, sort of kind of disparaging incel energy kind of thing, where all of our POV characters are very deeply flawed. Some would probably call them unlikable, but tragic. They're all very tragic in their own way, but also hilarious. And some of the uncomfortable social interactions and sexual, I don't even know if escapades is the right word, sexual disasters, and which in some places gets quite surreal, is really quite impressive. It's one of the it's one of the best books I think I've read. 5 stars, and like you know, I don't know if I would say that like you definitely have to read it. It's not going to be for everyone. It has a certain quality that people will like. I do think if you're queer, you'll be into it for sure. Okay, so next is a book I read, and just looking ahead, folks, I read 33 books this year, so buckle up. I know some people read an insane amount of books. I think 33 it's a lot for me because I don't put a lot of pressure on myself to read so much and read quickly. Oh, my cat, stop it. I have 2 cats. Did one of you just poop? Gotta be 1 second. Quite the claws. So maybe that would add. Anyway, one of my cats seems to like to poop and not cover up his litter. Also, by the way, I know I need a haircut. All right, Phil, come on up here. If you have to come on, let's get up. Come on. Up. Okay, now he doesn't want to come up. Out There by Kate Folk. Oh, now he wants to come up. Okay. Say hello to Phil. This is Philip. Philip is a good boy. Philip is from Los Angeles. And he's 10 years old. He's got one tooth and a clipped ear, and he's got an overbite. I would say he's not the brightest fellow. The other cat is pretty smart. He opens doors. He's like Jurassic Park. So Out There by Kate Folk. This one was given to me. It's a collection of short stories that are sort of very Black Mirror-y, but maybe with a feminist lens on them. There's a story about just kind of that there are sort of perfect artificial men out there that people are having sex with, and then it steals their DNA or something, and then they disappear. It was novel, but all the stories kind of had a similar vibe. So after a while, I started finding the tone a little repetitive, but I definitely enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. I would say read it if you're into Black Mirror, if you're into kind of like, if you find men annoying, which, relatable, then I would go ahead and read it. Next is Orbital, which this won the Booker Prize in 2024. This is a novel about the International Space Station and a fictional accounting of the International Space Station from the perspective of what someone who's an artist would. Sorry, I just thought there was something in my hair. You let me know if there's something in my hair, but not really. So yeah, the International Space Station, this author did a lot of research. The prose in this book is quite beautiful. It sort of feels like poetry in space, dream state in space. It's one of those books where I wouldn't say it has a conventional plot, but that doesn't bother me. Sort of just the feelings you have about space and about how it serves to highlight just how important the Earth is and how valuable it is to us. There's a whole notion of, I remember that there's a whole way of them looking down on the Earth from the space station, which is a collection of people from, all around the world. And they're sort of looking down on the Earth. And I remember getting this feeling reading the book of living in the house I grew up in New England. And I would often look out my bedroom to our backyard. We didn't have a huge backyard, but it was very nice, like grassy, well taken care of backyard with lots of plants and how special it felt. And I got that same sense from this book, the sense of like looking down from the space station at Earth, which is like this backyard, this garden, this place that actually isn't that big. So it's a really great sort of encapsulation of the overview effect There are other things in there. I remember this was for my book club that I go to. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I was going to read it anyway, even if my book club didn't recommend it. So I would recommend you read this. But if you're into more conventional plots, or like there's a lot of books when you read them, you're like, I don't understand the point of this book. It's one of those books. So if that's not your thing, don't go for it. All right, the next one here is Northwoods, which this was also on my list, but also it was for my book club. So I'm like, I'm going to read this now too. It also has a cat on it, which I love cats. And it's a book about nature. We have just a moment in time, and we see what happened on this spot of land, and then we keep going, seeing what happens on the same spot of land over and over. Kind of like that comic book / film here, which I didn't read the comic book, but I tried to watch the film, and I just found it so horrifically tedious that I couldn't get through it. And I watched a lot of movies. I will say I watched like 140 movies last year. Like a lot of them most people probably find quite boring, like Criterion Channel stuff. So I would say I have like a attention span for watching film, and this movie I just couldn't get through. But this book, beautifully written, tremendously engaging, just characters you can really feel like you really get into their heads and what they're about, and it was lovely. I said that was 5 stars. I just would recommend anyone read that. Oh, this book, where did I put this? Oh wait, no. So the next book I read, I don't have all my books because I did give some away, and some were ebooks. But this, in fact, I was going to put this on a pile today of things to give away. But this one is called Galaxies. And I did like this book, even though I said I would give it away. I didn't really learn a lot about Galaxies I didn't already know. There are a couple things I learned. To be fair, I know a lot about, I'm not a physicist or anything, but I love sci-fi. Sorry, I'm not giving you the finger. I love sci-fi, and I love galaxies. And so I was like, I would love to read a nonfiction book about galaxies. This is a whole series of books from MIT Press, the Essential Knowledge series. And while there was a lot of good basic information, I went away feeling like I needed another resource. So as an overview, I think these books are great, but we often end up going through things and not going into enough depth for me, but it's not a very big book. So I don't blame them for that. Maybe that's my fault. Maybe I would enjoy this series for things that I'm less knowledgeable about. But yeah, pretty good. I give that 4 stars. If I stop saying how many stars it is, then, well, I can do what I want. I still have to figure out this battery situation. But the cat's on me. Also, I can still smell like the cat's poop. Why is that? The litter box is okay. See, this is TV, people. Isn't this what you wanted to hear? So the next one is Martyr. Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. So this book also was for the book club. And actually, I had seen people with it on the train, and I thought it was like, at times I thought it was like a little bit convenient and a little bit annoying. But I really couldn't fault any of its authenticity. And I also just couldn't put it down. So it was really good, in my opinion, even though there were things about it as I was reading that I'm like, do I like this? But I was reading it and enjoying it. So I definitely was. This person is a poet, and I've realized this year that I really like books that are written by poets, because there is such care put into I know every author puts in care, but there are books that are just the writing part of it. It feels so functional. And if I can't enjoy a book on a writing level, I can't read it. It's kind of part of why I've generally stopped reading science fiction, because I find the prose in most science fiction to be so utilitarian. Maybe that's the right word. It's so pragmatically written. Like everything is about kind of conveying the information in an almost like scientific way possible, which I guess makes sense. But I really, and then some books that are more literary, I feel like they're lighter on concept. Don't quote me on that. And God, what book were we talking about? Oh, Martyr. There was like a moment in the book where it was like, that's where this is going. I don't know how I feel about that, but I guess it's possible. I'm not going to say what happened in case you decide to read it. I don't think it really hurts the book. I'm someone who, when it comes to plots, if there's a plot twist, like I don't really need a plot twist to be impressed by anything. Like it takes a lot to surprise me, like so much. Like I tried to watch that TV show Dark because people said it'll blow your mind. Well, and guess what? My mind was not blown, and I'm really struggling to finish that show. I'm making it sound like I just don't watch it, like I can't get through anything. It's not true. Okay. I really need to figure out this charger situation. It's going great. You kidding me? Oh, well, I did it. We're charging. Of course, my charging port is not what it used to be. So I would recommend you read Martyr if you're into poets. If you liked Ocean Vuong's book, which will come up soon, that is something you should read. Okay, what's next here? The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. So this is a classic novel, really about, and I haven't read any Ursula. I'd sort of been saving her, and I can't for the life of me imagine why I do this. When I think I'm really gonna like something, I'll be like, oh no, 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 I'm not gonna read that because I want to save it for when I'll really enjoy it. And then what happens is I end up never getting to that thing, and which is a bummer. So this one, though, I thought her diligence and sort of adherence to the world she created is very interesting and commendable. I love the concept. I love the ideas she plays with where it's like she's on this world, our protagonist, our narrator's on this world where gender is like seasonal. So everyone gets to be a part of all the gender dynamics there. Sometimes you are like the more masculine or feminine. Was there a third gender? And the reality of this is that there were no wars, which was rather an indictment of testosterone in some way. I mean, it's kind of makes you think like, if there were no men, would there be wars? It's like, I don't know. Very interesting. And then part of the thing I did not like about it, like she creates like, I mean, I can still see the images of some of the descriptions she had of the places, but I found that the characters themselves had a sort of lack of inner life. And so it was hard for me to stay focused. And but it was a great concept. And as a genre, I found that like science fiction as a genre is so concept focused that we don't like to explore characters in depth usually. And if we do, I often think that like maybe the concept suffers. Like I know there's the whole concept of cozy sci-fi, which I have one of those cozy sci-fi books. So like Jury's Still Out, like The Long Way to an Angry Planet, that one, someone gifted me that and I need to read it. But I like my sci-fi cozy, but only if it's on TV. I don't know if I want more from my books. And I do think too that people who complain that, like people are like, well, sci-fi has gone woke because there's a queer person in my book. It's like, well, it's one reason why I think that sci-fi has over the years tended to veer more into, first of all, it was always commenting on social issues, always. But there is like a segment of the genre that is kind of just about the military or reinforcing norms or that kind of thing. Not that reinforcing all norms like are bad. Some norms are good. I'm sure you can think of something that's a norm that is like good. But I think that sci-fi in a way is like kind of a dying genre as we used to think about it, which was that coming out of World War II, there have been so much scientific progress, really for centuries, like since like electricity, the atom bomb, the computer, the personal computer, and through to AI, we've seen just AI we've seen sci-fi become real, and so it's very logical that science fiction would sort of turn inward and become even more focused on character, more focused on emotion. But I don't necessarily feel like it's like come far enough in that way for me. And when looking, and like I know a lot of people have a longing for like books like this Ursula book, which again is very well thought out, the concept. But I for me it was just sort of lacking in. I just did not feel close to these characters. They were very. I did not feel like their internality. But like I don't think that's what sci-fi in general has been for. But I think that, sorry to get back to what I was saying about sci-fi being somewhat dead, is that when your reality becomes science fiction, how do you write science fiction? Like people lament sort of the demise of like the classic, where's the interesting concept? It's like, well, if you think about it, we've done a lot of interesting concepts in science fiction. Like if you've seen every episode of The Twilight Zone and you've seen every episode of Star Trek, for example, then you have seen almost every science fiction story that there is to see. Like when Everything Everywhere All at Once came out, people were like, "Oh my God, different realities." And I'm like, yeah, Worf did that. I mean, for a much smaller budget and kind of less interesting, but this concept of quantum realities like isn't new. It's just more ubiquitous now. People know about it. So I do think that sci-fi as a genre, like it I'm more interested when sci-fi has more to say about like the human heart itself. Message me or comment or whatever if like you know any books like that. But sort of, I wanted to like this book. I have some other Ursula books on my list, which is, all of them. I have another one floating around here, or maybe it's over there. But yeah, the Left Hand of Darkness. It looks like I didn't even give it a rating. I think I give it like, 3 stars, I guess. Like it's very good. I just want to feel emotions, and I was interested. That interest didn't really spark too much reflection on me. All right. Oh boy, this one, A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. Now, I found this one because I was looking for something about interiority after reading Ursula. And so this one is, I need to reread this because I came away from it not feeling like I had gotten a lot out of it. It's about a guy in the UK, I think in the early 1900s, and he gets a room, I think blacksmithing or like doing something for the, like, I don't know. If you saw the Banshees of Inisherin, all I remember reading this is like just, I know it takes place in Ireland or whatever, but my recollection is like wet leaves, wet forest, wet fields, and talking. But I don't really remember what happened. There was a man, there was a girl, and it's not very long, but like wetness and decay and character. That's what this was about. But I don't remember. I don't remember what happened. So, A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. Have you read it? This is why I should have done research. I edited this, so I could have looked it up, but I'm too lazy. Okay. So, the Magnificent Ambersons. So, the Magnificent Ambersons, I have been reading. I decided at the end of 2024, after finding this book in upstate New York, there's a place where there's like it's like a book city. There are tons of cute little bookstores that sold lots of used books. And this is Booth Tarkington's first few novels and I think some short stories. And like Booth Tarkington was one of the first people to win the Pulitzer. And so after reading some of it, I read Amy Adams, his first one, which won the Pulitzer. And then I decided to read, I said like, wait, you know what? Why don't I read all of the Pulitzers for fiction, all of them? And so I've just been starting in order doing that. Though I did skip the first one, His Family, because I think that's what it's called, because the edition I got was so moldy that it was kind of making me like sick. So I have to get back to the first one eventually. But like I was continuing my Pulitzer journey and I read this book. It's in here. Or is it in here or did I read it somewhere else? Ooh. Okay, this used a lot of your energy. So I'm reading The Magnificent Ambersons, and this is like a satire. There's actually an old movie, like a film, based on this. I think it came out in the 40s that I still need to read. But Booth Tarkington was a well-known playwright who did write novels. And his novels, I think his plays too. I'm not so familiar with those, but they're satires. And it's interesting to get perspective on what people are worried about during the 1920s. There's a lot of anxiety, but optimism post-war. People post-World War I, people are thriving because this is also during like this is pre-Depression, and like I'll just divert into not Amy Adams. His first novel that I read, Alice Adams, and in that book, people are talking about how like no one wants to work anymore, no one can get a job, and I was just reminded of what I've heard people say about kind of like the generation now that nobody wants to work, like kind of in the years after COVID, and people remember the Great Resignation. Do you remember that? People were saying like no one wants to work anymore. And like this is unprecedented that no one wants to work. And of course, I'm out here like being like, yeah, no one wants to work. No one ever, if we didn't have to work, we wouldn't do a lot of work. So and like he's kind of poking fun at this tone. It's often from the both books are from the perspective of like a young person kind of navigating the social and familial dynamics. I liked this one less than Alice Adams. In fact, I've talked about Alice Adams so much, I feel like maybe I should just go read that instead. This one is about a family that kind of, it's about someone who is in love with someone. Our main character, he's a guy. I can't even remember his name, but and like for those of you like who are like, why can't you remember? It's like I started this in fact, like, looks like I read this from February to March. So excuse me if I can't remember. And I don't know, the tone of the satires and these old satires, you're not going to get everything. I did laugh sometimes because it was so goofy, but without the context, satire loses some of its bite when you don't understand the actual context. So maybe someone who's, I'm sure one of my college professors would get a real kick out of this, but it was pretty good. It was pretty funny. I like reading these older books. It's very readable. Like nothing from the 20s is hard to read. I will say, like, if you think, oh, I can't read an old book, it's too hard to read. It's like not at all. Like language seems to have been pretty consistent in the last 100 years, so you will have no problem understanding and reading this. But yeah, this book I thought was okay. I would say if you're going to read Booth Tarkington, read Alice Adams, and then I actually did try watching this movie a little bit. I couldn't really get into it, but I think I just come back from a trip and just wasn't good timing. So yeah, I'd say like don't regret reading that book. Might not pick that up again. Definitely will read more Booth Tarkington, but he's not really up on my list right now. Department of Speculation by Jenny Ophel. So this was I read this one pretty quick. Looks like I read it in like a day. This one is about, sometimes when I read books too fast, I don't remember a lot about them, but this one is about divorce and motherhood and trauma. And I remember thinking the prose were quite good. It's very sad. It's mostly about, I think, a woman divorcing her husband and about motherhood. Now, I will say that lately I have read a lot of books about motherhood, and I think I'm good. I have read a lot. Like, mothers are incredible. They've done so much for us. There was just a period of time, like, where I think in 2024, I ended up reading a lot of books that have to do with mothers. I mean, it comes up in really as a theme in a lot of books. I think I've just like somehow veered into this. I like a lot of woman authors, so I think I end up reading a lot about things like motherhood. And so I've actually developed this intense appreciation more than I think I could without reading them, like as a man. And also working with someone who's a new mother, one of my good friends. So I would say that I think it's definitely a helpful book to read if you're not really into. You know what book it reminded me of, even though it's nothing like it, but Molly by Blake Butler. It just kind of seems like that book is just devastating, just mind-blowingly devastating, and it kind of goes on a little too long. So I think like, oh man, that book. Oh man, trigger warning for that one regarding. Well, you'll see. But anyway, moving on. So Magnificent Ambersons, take it or leave it, whatever. Moving on to My Ántonia by Willa Cather. So Willa Cather is, you know what? I just realized why are these books all out of order? I don't know. Goodreads is kind of annoying. So let's stop for a second because these two seem to be switched around. But the first one I want to point out is One of Ours by Willa Cather. Willa Cather is an author I had not read before, and I picked this book because I'm reading all the Pulitzer winners, and this was one of them. And what a great discovery I made, because this book I thought was incredible. So, and by the way, I do like these vintage press editions with the little diamonds. think they're very, very nice. I love the way they look. They're just so easy to read. So this is a early Pulitzer winner. It's like in the first 5 or so. And it's about a guy. Oh man, why can't I remember his name? Claude. So it's about Claude. Oh my God, what's all this on my shirt? Well, whatever. So Claude is someone in the Midwest who, this is pre-World War One, and he doesn't really know, he doesn't really fit in. He hasn't really found his way. And I love characters like this who are not well, you know, who are not, feel like they're not part of society, who have so much to go on inside of them, so much interiority for us to unearth as they go through very mundane situations and just things that are so easy for people being so hard for them. It's just like, they're kind of like one of the best ways to write a character in literature, I think. So like, you want someone who has a lot of things to unearth. And in this, Willa Cather was a secret lesbian, like not officially, but from what I've read, when you live with a lady and they were friends. It's like, we know Willa. So, and you can see the kind of the intense queer coding through this book. And there's a moment, I was in this book towards the end where I gasped. And I was in a public space and I was like, oh. I was really moved by this book. This book actually is considered one of her lesser works because it is interpreted as being pro-war. And it is called One of Ours. So, but really it's about someone who kind of feels like they never fit in. And I don't want to, it really is the war, because the war happens in this book, but kind of through the war, it's the only way he ever feels like he has any meaning or purpose in his life. And you could interpret that as pro-war or whatever. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I don't think that's what she's trying to say. Is it hard to believe that someone who never feels like they fit in could, he didn't fit in with, because he felt like he loved war. He wasn't a warmonger. That's not why he felt like he fit in. It was because he was around people in circumstances that were sort of direct, and people around him cared about his well-being, which is something he hadn't really experienced. So I would really recommend reading this book and Willa Cather in general, because I became a fan and I read what's considered her most famous book, My Ántonia. And this one is about life on, the life on the plains, sort of frontier life. And this is her most popular work that she's most famous for, and I did not like this as much. People say it's deeply nostalgic, and that's part of why it's popular. But I have no nostalgia for some of the things the characters were dealing with. What's interesting is that Ántonia is not the POV character in this book. And I just ended up, I ended up giving that one away actually, so I don't have it to show you. But that one was just okay. So I would say Willa Cather, One of Ours, 5 stars, go read it. I mean, and then if you don't like it, well, whatever. Everyone likes different things. And then My Ántonia, it's the more popular one. So maybe I'm just weird and I just don't like that one. But maybe you will. That one I thought was much less interesting. And it was much shorter, but it took me a while to read. Oh, okay. So the next one was... So this is the Annihilation trilogy. And I read the first one, Annihilation. I'd seen the movie. The movie is amazing. kind of the first 20 minutes are weird, and then it gets going. So I decided to read there was a deal on this, like the trilogy. I'm like, I'll read the trilogy because I saw there's another new one. And I thought it was good. Maybe I didn't focus as much because I like the military. I mean, I like the film so much, but the book I thought was just okay, a bit different. I mean, it's still good. It still felt like contained in this other world, but otherwise, I didn't really think it was that exciting. And I guess I'll just get to it now. But I also read the second one, which is in here, and the second one I thought, okay, like second one we like switched to a new character. The new character. I mean, we're really deep in a character's head, which is something I like, but I also don't know what happened in the second one. I didn't really I didn't really have any takeaways. That's the thing is that I find with some of these things that are not like I just didn't have any takeaways like afterwards. I'm like, okay. I don't know. I don't even think it's badly written. I just like as I'm reading it, it's just I maybe there's subtext I'm missing, but it felt more like a thriller and didn't it just didn't like spark my interest. So I don't know if I'm gonna read the third one. I don't know if I have any interest in the Southern Reach anymore. So that's that. But I don't regret reading them. So I guess they're in my 3-star category. Whew. Wow, this is exhausting. Well, let me see here. Well, we got through 15 of those, so I'm going to take a break for now because I'm actually getting tired of talking. I don't know how people do this. So we'll be back. Either this will be end of part 1 or, you know. So if this is part 1, please tune in to part 2 because I think we've gotten through about 15 books, which means there's still 18 left. And I'm not even counting comic books. And I'm not going to tell you about the comic books. I really don't read that many. But maybe I will. Maybe I will talk about that. Okay, bye. I'm back. I was tired, and now I have a little coffee. Okay, so where were we? Oh, the Able McLaughlins. This was another Pulitzer winner. It takes place during the Civil War. Kind of a comment on sexual assault. Wouldn't necessarily recommend it to somebody. But in my Pulitzer journey, I had to read it. The next one is The Professor's House by Willa Cather. And I have that book somewhere, but maybe it's in the back and I just missed it. But another Willa Cather book. So this book is about... Her books are so interesting because they are all, so far, have been very different. It is about a professor, and it's about someone was lost that was close to his family. Someone very important to them. And at some point, you get the POV of the person who they lost. And it's a quietly haunting story. And I don't think it was as good as one of ours, but it has stuck with me. At first, I thought I didn't like it. But I have found it. In fact, where is it? Because I hope I didn't get rid of it. I can't find it, and I think I want to read it again. Because I will tell you, I started another Willa Cather book, Lucy Gayheart. It's not long, it's like 200 pages. But it's like the same, where I'm not sure if this is like really fun or anything, but I'm definitely feeling connected to her. It's like this weird, ineffable thing where I don't really understand what it is. So I'm very sad that I can't find this book. Oh, wait. Never mind. I did find it at the professor's house. Good book. But maybe not. It's one of those books I think I should reread because her books instigate intense reflection for me. All right, what's next? This one is called A Children's Bible by Lydia Millett. He read it for my book club, and it's seemingly a normal story. I should clarify that I don't really read the back of these books for my book club. In general, everyone picks. I don't even usually vote. Yeah, what was I saying? I think I have like phone-induced dementia, by the way. Did you hear about that? There's like a consensus study published, an article out of New Zealand, where phones there's a 400% correlation between early onset dementia and phone use. And it makes sense if you think about how they're like, do Sudoku and crosswords to keep your brain going as you age. Literally all the editing we do around TikTok and stuff like that, and other short form videos, and even some TV probably, and the fact that we second screen everything, we're like cooking our brains. We're really preparing for the end times so anytime I can't think, that's what I blame. Or it could just be the state of the world and how it's so hard to focus right now. A children's Bible. I read it for the book club, and it seems to be about people on vacation. And at first I'm like, oh God, like these kids are so annoying. They're so bratty and spoiled, and they know everything. But I'll keep going. And then it took a turn, and the story is actually like a weird kind of disaster book. It was actually very thoughtful and considered, and I ended up really enjoying it. I say that, but then I only gave it 3 stars because I think part of it is that if you read, it's easy to know what the premise is about. I had no idea what the premise is, so I was shocked as the people in the story when the story turned. But I think if you read the back of the cover, you won't be surprised. You might have a 3-star reaction like me, but I don't regret reading it at all. This is also part of the problem with rating things, especially art, as you change and grow. Definitely when I go to my book club, my opinion of whatever we're reading always dramatically improves. Because through the reflection, I just realize how jam-packed all these works of art are. Okay. So the next book up is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. So where is that? I probably don't need to even hold this up because I'm sure people are familiar with it. So I've had that book actually since 2019 when I started reading it, but I found myself so profoundly impacted by it that I had to stop reading it. Like, I wasn't even that far in, but just the relationship with the mom, just anyone having some kind of problem with their parent, it just really works on me. So after doing years of therapy, I am able to read that book and digest it. And the On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous is a beautiful book. Very much a part of the queer experience. I heard Ocean Bong say something because he is intensely critiqued by a certain group of media, I found. And I think part of that is just because of failure to understand him. A lot of his work has a sentimentality and honesty to it, which people do not like. People are very much focused on his craft and his use of it and if it's any good or not. But I find his work extremely soulful and authentic and very much relatable to a queer experience that has been rooted in, if you have any kind of intense, repressive part of your life, you are going to relate to this book. because it really speaks to that. Hello. This is Philip. Oh, wait, I already had you meet him. Yes. Okay, so yeah, would read that. 5 stars. Again, another poet who's writing a novel, like the one I mentioned earlier, Martyr. And then the next book is Lanny by Max Porter. So this is a book, a very lyrical book that has all these nature overtones, nature undertones. It has nature themes. There's like I think like some kind of spirit in it. Again, trying to remember back to May of 2025. This one did not hit with me as much as some of the other books I read. I heard it was beautiful. The book was, I've given it away. There's a bookstore that if you give them 5 books, they give you a free coffee. So I do that all the time. Sometimes I just give it to people that I know. But inflation, why not give my books away that way for a free coffee? The book is covered in accolades. And I'd read online that I would really love this book. And I thought it was fine. I don't think it was bad. I just thought I would connect with it in a much more intense, soulful way than I did. I don't know if I'd recommend that one, honestly. It's fine. It's tragic because a child goes missing, and that's hard, and it gets dark for a while. But I think it ultimately ends hopeful. Okay, so the next book is So Big by Edna Ferber. Now, this book is another Pulitzer journey book. This book is so good. This book is about, as a lot of books were in that time, about rural life, frontier life. The Pulitzer was originally supposed to honor books that presented American life. And it's evolved over time. These early Pulitzers are very much about expressing certain values. Some of these values are really intensely necessary today. And you can see how the breakdown of certain values, I don't mean like traditional family values or whatever. There's a whole concept that keeps coming up in all these early Pulitzers where people, you can tell the author is casting a side eye on what's called money values, which are people who just care about money only. And we can feel now where that's all come to in our society. But this book is also about that. This woman, she gives up so much for her kid, for him to have a great life. But she also always does it because it's what she wants to do. And her child grows up and on some level never really connects with that. And the end of the book, the last page, see, this is why it's important to make sure we all have gotten through books that we wish we had stopped reading. But this book, like, I thought it was good. And then the last couple pages, I am like, wow, what an ending. It, like, you realize that thematically everything was building and building. And then just I think really it was like a few lines, just like the dam breaks and just like in one moment, all the themes of the book just crush you. And it is like quite, like, that is a good book. I would definitely recommend people read that. And again, what's great about reading books that are, the language is modern enough, you're not gonna have any problems reading it, but seeing how different life was, but also seeing how much things are the same, it's a valuable experience for understanding the society that we live in. Okay, so this next one. So this is the Overstory. I think this is the British version. I don't know how I ended up with that one. Someone gave it to me for Christmas. So I've been wanting to read this book for forever. And I was not disappointed, like, at all by this book. It has if you've ever watched anything Jane Goodall related or anything about nature in the Northwest, if you have a love of trees, you are going to really enjoy this book, especially because of the spirituality that comes along with it and how that's mixed in with science. It's it's like a good companion to read with Northwoods because it does really dive into those themes. And the way it all comes together, I'm surprised it's like as popular as it is. I really have to give human beings credit that they care this much about a book that's special. I do think this book is special in how it just makes, it's like trees are important. Trees are the most important thing, and if you don't think so, then you're a bad person. But this book is spiritual. This book is sophisticated. It's emotional. But if you don't get into the headspace of the characters, and if you can, on some level, I agree with the actions that people take in this to protect the trees. So if you are an environmentalist or care about our planet, then I think you will really appreciate this book. This is another Pulitzer winner. It wasn't part of my Pulitzer journey that I'm on. It's just a book I wanted to read that happens to be one. I would recommend that so much. Okay, so What Belongs to You by Garth Greenwell. This is another poet who has written a novel. Now, this book is very interesting in that it is so brutally honest. It is so honest. It is memoiristic in tone. Like, it's definitely been fictionalized, but it's about his experience in Eastern European country. I think it's Hungary. It's an Eastern European country where being gay is like, it's like a little okay. And this takes place in the 2000s. And it's just a really brutally honest look at this person's experience with his childhood trauma, with his related to his father, about his own queerness and how that played out with other people he knew growing up. It's just so intensely personal. And the way it's written, like this page here, this is all like one paragraph. Like he has this way of writing where it doesn't stop. So you just keep going. And you'd think that would tire you out, but actually the effect is that I feel like for me, it just ramps up the pace because you're not ever mentally breaking. You're reading and you're reading and you're reading. I feel like there's one that goes on for 9 pages and it's very effective. And again, like he's a poet, and so every word feels so considered and there's a rhythm to this book. But I will say this book is, as a queer person, some of it was deeply relatable, but also ugly to look at. And I found this reading this on some level was deeply healing in a way I didn't anticipate. But it took a while to process that. So after I read this book, actually, it took me a while to read my next book. Like I finished this in June, and I didn't start reading again. I finished this June 19th, and then I read another book. Like it killed all my reading until July because I was just profoundly impacted. It deals with so much shame, really. I would say this book is just filled with shame. And actually, the reason I read this book is because for my book club, we were going to read his new book. So as soon as I was done with this, I had to jump into this one. I live in New York City. I don't like to think about COVID. I know it was bad everywhere, but it was really scary here. I had COVID like immediately. Like I had COVID like before lockdown even happened. And because I did the antibody test and that would have been the only time I've been sick. I guess I could have had an asymptomatic case, but whatever. And so trigger warning if books about COVID are triggering for you. Because this is really about COVID. And he is about a hospital stay he had during COVID. And again, he is so honest. Like this man, Garth, I know he says that like these things aren't about him, but if you look up, he does this thing where he uses just the first initial to describe people. Like you don't put their full names, just their first initial. And part of that is style, but part of that is because he's using the first initial of a real person. In this, he has a boyfriend who is another poetry professor. And would you know it, like Garth Greenwell also has like a boyfriend who's a poetry professor, and they're both poetry professors. That's somewhere in like Iowa, I think. So reading this was very intense. It's a healthcare, unrelated to COVID, but a healthcare experience that happened during COVID. Imagine the anxiety. But the thing that drags you through this is that the brutal honesty about himself, like to an extent where he's ideating about every conversation he's having. To actually get through this, I did switch at some point to the audiobook, and he reads the audiobook, and he is so good at reading this. It is so, I can hear his voice in my head as I'm talking. Again, if you want to feel an intensely personal experience, you must read this. I very much recommend it. I have another book of his, and I'm like excited slash dreading to read it because I need to be in a very secure space in order to read that. I think I need to read it actually with my therapist, like looking over my shoulder, because that's the only way I'll get through it. Or maybe my therapist could read it and provide commentary, something like that. I don't know. Oh boy. Okay, what's this? Oh, this one I think I don't count because I started it in 2022 and I didn't finish it until this year. So Goodreads counted it on this list, but I'm going to keep it on anyway. This is Stories of Your Life by Ted Chiang. And probably a lot of people was exposed to Ted Chiang via Arrival, that movie by Denis Villeneuve, starring Amy Adams. And okay, I love Arrival. One of the best films. Just so wonderful. And Ted Chiang, like I've heard interviews with him. He's so smart. He's so insightful. I love hearing interviews with authors. They have so much to say. They're usually really good at being interviewed. Hearing his thoughts, like I love listening to him. And I loved the first couple of stories in this book. However, and I know this is like going to be sacrilegious, which is a funny term to use in reference to him, because he's really good at combining spiritual and not actually spiritual, I would say religious aspects. He brings all this realism to religion and puts them in his stories. And I don't enjoy that. He's very smart and he's very novel. I think all the stories in this are unique and interesting, like a unique mind created them. But I just found over time that it's just not what I'm interested in. A unique concept is almost like, after encountering so many novel concepts, novelty can feel formulaic because it's, oh, great, another thing I hadn't thought of before. Which sounds absurd to say, but the books that are resonating with me lately are just so intensely personal is that I'm really interested in people's internal lived experience. And I have I think there's some religious trauma like in my life. I don't think Ted Chiang's religious, but he likes to show like there's a lot of religious iconography, doctrine. There's a whole story about like where angels are real, seraphims, I believe, and they're coming to Earth and causing trouble, and it's like a whole thing. And I'm like, this is stressing me out. I don't like this. And like, I would say that people should absolutely read his book. I think people will enjoy it. This is like a book where I definitely appreciate his work. I'm so glad he's a voice out there, but I'm not sure, at least for now, he's for me. But the story of Arrival people say that's better than the movie. I actually think the movie's better and more emotional. Okay, so next book that I read is The Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli. Carlo Rovelli is an Italian physicist who has some interesting thoughts about the nature of time and how we perceive it, and if it's a true dimension that has permanence. I find this fascinating because I think about this all the time with human beings and about what we are actually perceiving versus what is reality. And of course, perception is reality. But the way we filter everything through our minds, like everything that we do, is so much a part of our survival instinct, right? That's why our brains exist. Brains don't exist to do a lot of the things we do. It just exists so that we can survive long enough and procreate. And so with a lot of things, when it's almost like sometimes I don't trust anything that I think or believe because the filter that brought it to me is so unreliable. If you think about how our eyes, for example, we only see so much of the visible spectrum, right? Maybe if we saw more of the visible spectrum, people wouldn't be racist because we'd see color differently. I don't know. And this book has that same idea in that, like, maybe time itself is just a symptom of human perception and entropy. So the nature of our existence makes it seem like time is this flow. So is time real? Is it something you can travel through? I don't know. It doesn't seem like he thinks so, but it's a very interesting book, very accessible. Would recommend reading that. Okay, what's next? I Who Have Never Known Man by Jacqueline Hartman. So this one, I read it for the book club and then didn't go, but I still read it. And I think this was a book that was becoming popular on TikTok. It's actually an older book. And it's a fascinating story about women who live underground. There are no men, and there are generations of these women living underground. And then one day they get out and they're forced to make their way through the world. And they don't have any understanding of the world or what it is. And it's a sort of deeply haunting, but also captures this intense sense of curiosity in the reader because you're trying to understand what happened and you feel so terribly for these women. And I wish I had great things to say about their fates. I think it's worth a read. It's not very long. All right, what's this one? So this one, a friend recommended to me. It's called Some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh. Now, this one is a space opera. But going back to what I said about sci-fi in general, is that I love sci-fi, but also sci-fi is dead to me. This is definitely more about like social issues and about indoctrination and growing up closeted in a way, not even just this like queer closeting, though there is queer coding. It could be just emotional or religious repression, or like repression of the self by religion or by propaganda, and about what forms us as individuals. I guess in a way it's similar to the book before this one, except I Have Never Known Men is more about. But this book was very ambitious in setting up a new world, but I don't know if the world ever really captured my imagination. Except what I did is that, so there's someone in it who realizes that like basically everything she knows has been a lie. And so she goes into another world and sees how happy people are. The enclosure of propaganda has literally kept her mind, not literally, it has closed off her mind from seeing what's right in front of her. And seeing a journey from disbelief to change is interesting. But I think on a writing level, again, this is like kind of like a sci-fi book for all to read. I think it won some prize, but I didn't find on a writing level it to be very interesting. Again, it felt very pragmatic, very much a pragmatic novel in terms of its prose. Okay, so the next one is Outline by Rachel Cusk. And so this book is about a teacher, or about a writer who goes to Greece to teach a class on writing, or there's a seminar or something on writing that she's going to. But it's really more about her interacting with people on her trip. And she meets someone on an airplane to Greece. She has interactions with this man. She doesn't seem to really like him very much, but it's used as a tool to flesh out something about this character. And I feel like we never get to really fully know her. She's a distance from us, but I think that's probably where the outline thing comes from, because we never fully know her. She's like the outline of a character. I think that's what it means. And because the story is definitely, I say that I like things that are intensely personal, and this is, though I won't say that there's implied depth from everything. And it's so well written that even though I wouldn't say there's much of a plot, every scene on its own just contains so much drama, and it's carried. It doesn't. Like, if you were just to watch what happens, like, almost nothing happens. But the strengths of the prose, like, just carries you through, and found it one of the more memorable experiences reading this year. I would say actually it's like a 5-star for me. And then it's part of a trilogy. And so I read the second one, which was called Transit. And that one I thought it's very similar, except that I almost couldn't follow how we've moved from one point to the next. And you think the story is about one thing, but then we seemingly go to somewhere else in the story. And maybe that's why it's called Transit, is that we had these points. I don't even know who the main character was. Like, I thought I did. Like, someone was renovating their apartment, and then somehow she wasn't anymore. I don't know. We just went down these. It's just interesting how nothing followed. It was almost like we went down a train of thought of a person and we ended up somewhere else. Maybe that's the transit. I don't know. But I thought it was less successful than the first one, but I'm still going to read the other one. And I have one of her other books too, and I'm still going to read that. So another book I read, Arrowsmith by Sinclair Lewis. So Arrowsmith, Sinclair Lewis is a very famous author. You might have heard of him or read him in college. He has another book like Main Street, which is very popular. You see it on tables at bookstores. The book, It Can't Happen Here, or It Can Never Happen Here. It's about how, I haven't read it, but I think it's supposed to be about fascism coming to America. So that's also like on a lot of bookstore tables for the last, ever since Trump was president. And Sinclair Lewis, he won a Pulitzer, though he famously turned it down and did not accept his Pulitzer Prize. So Sinclair Lewis tends to write these satires also, like our friend Booth Tarkington. And in this case, he was writing about the medical profession and science and just how medicine is influenced by money and science is influenced by money, and the ethical compromises people will take to get that money. This is only the second Sinclair Lewis book I've read. I think it's a very long book for a satire. It's like 450 pages. And so I did find it hard to get through, especially because the two main characters, they seem so similar. A lot of the characters feel the same. They're all like vehicles for the message. And I think the book was good, and I can see how at the time it was very novel, because they're the first medical book, the first science book, because he did do a lot of research into it to be accurate about what he was saying. And I do all his books, I think they all take place in kind of like the same universe, because the only other book of his I read was Babbitt, but the city Babbitt is from Zenith, comes up in this book too. And I think Babbitt might himself, he's the main or protagonist of the book Babbitt, which is also a satire, though significantly shorter. And I would actually recommend that book also because it's hilarious. Babbitt shows up as well. So I do all his books seem to take place in like his little universe that he's created. But yeah, I don't know if I would tell people to jump into reading that one. Definitely if you're reading all the Pulitzers, maybe it would be a little challenging for some people, but I think it was worthwhile, because I think what I found profound was just how skeptical people were of capitalism mixed with science and medicine. And again, we are way down the path on that. I definitely would say check out Sinclair Lewis, but this would not be my first recommendation. Babbitt is short. If you read Main Street, let me know. If you read that other book, It Could Have Never Happened Here, let me know, because those both seem topical. Main Street, I forgot. I think Main Street is about how people are manipulated into believing a certain thing by the press. The next book I read was In Tongues by Thomas Grattan. So this is another gay trauma book, deeply relatable. This person's a memoir, autofiction kind of thing, I think. It's about this person growing up, arriving in New York City as a gay person in the year 1990, and just all the things they have to go through to become financially independent and feel comfortable in their own skin, which kind of sounds like never really happens. They have a parentage that is very much like broken family, but also one that a mother who's not caring and a father who is also not very caring, but wrapped up in magical thinking, which turned out to be extremely relatable for me. And it's just a profound telling of just the challenges that gay people go through because of homophobia in their family and just how unnecessary it is. Life is so challenging, and to cast your child aside and not be supportive is just, it really can impair. I think you get the idea. Really good book. Very well written. I don't think this author's written many books. I think this might be a debut. I can't remember. Or very early on. Would recommend. So I finished that book. Christmas Eve. And somehow I found the time to do one more book in my Pulitzer journey, which was Early Autumn, A Story of a Lady. This book also surprised me, and it had that sort of British vibe. Now, I think the term early autumn, like, it takes place in New England in the, what year did it take place? I think it was a, oh, okay. So early autumn takes place shortly after World War I in Durham, Massachusetts, which, no, sorry, cat bumping the camera. And it's about basically someone who is never fully able to express their love for somebody, someone who's never satisfied. It was just very well written. I think I'm starting to like these books that take place written. This one, I think, won the award in 1929 or 1928 for the Pulitzer. It takes place in New England, and it's about the sort of decline of New England as the center of like aristocratic society, as more and more that moves to places like New York and across the country. And in fact, there's a line of it that like I thought was great that reminds me of how I feel about New York City. I live in Brooklyn, but that it talked about how New York City is the most American place on the planet, which contrasts with someone like I heard once, Fran Lebowitz said that she loves New York City because it's the most un-American place in America. And I feel like New York City is like the ideal of what America could be. And as a result, because that our ideal ends up not being anything like America, because so much of America is not accepting. And we're all separated from each other. The nature of the suburbs is that you are separated. Whereas here, we're forced to interact every day. So that's only a small part of it, but there is a sadness that kind of is over the whole novel as this woman who, she's 40, our main character, and I think that's part of what the early autumn is, that she's someone in the early autumn of her life and dealing with the melancholy of that, the regret about what life could have been. And like she's presented with a situation right in front of her where she could make a choice to live the rest of her life happily, and will she do it or not? A really great book, unexpected, really unexpected that. And I tore through that one in just 3 days. That was good. I also wanted to slip another book at the end of the year, though I'm not a crazy person who would have been actually upset about hitting my yearly goals. But yeah, so that is what I've read in 2024. Hope this is entertaining for you. Hope you learned something. Try not to spoil too much. Try to give you some idea of if you would like these books. But we'll see what I end up posting in the future.